But the biggest thing that I see is that people go and they just default to going and dumping money into digital marketing at any stage of their business without taking advantage of all the free and easy things that they need to do. That's like 9 out of 10 people that come into the program. They just go pay a marketing agency or a freelancer, or they hire a virtual assistant, or they get someone on Fiverr to build the website, do the logo, like everything, SEO, everything. But then they're not willing to post and tell people on their personal Facebook page, hey, I own this business. They're not active in local community Facebook groups. They're not going and doing local networking events if they're a local business. So again, it's not that obviously digital marketing works, but it's not that it doesn't work or that I'm against that. What I'm against is them going and doing that, then blaming the digital marketing agency world for not being, ethical or whatever, but then they're not going to their personal Facebook page and promoting their stuff.
Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Legacy's Journey, where we talk about creating what outlives you. I'm your host, Cameron Williams, owner of Kinley Consulting, where we focus on strategic financial growth for marketing agencies so that they can live the dream life they deserve and not be a slave to their business. And we do that through accounting, tax, and CFO services. Now, this is season 2. In season 2, I had to go get the big dogs. And you meet some people in passing. You may have been at the same conference, but you didn't really get a chance to sit down. So I had to go into the pool and be like, hey, I know somebody that I know is a beast at this. And so I felt like we should bring them on the podcast because they've done some crazy things in a short amount of time. I know a little bit about their story because I've seen them present before. And I think it'll bring a wide variety of great do's, don'ts, watch out fors. So with all that being said, Adam McChesney is here.
Cam, thanks for having me on, man. Excited to be here.
All right. So you got to tell the people, because, everybody doesn't know how great you are. I know some of these statistics, of course, but tell the people kind of who you are, name of the company, and then walk us through a little bit of your journey, and then we'll start going into the specifics and details.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Adam McChesney. I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri with my family, my wife, Delaney, our 8-month-old now, Murphy, and our dog, Georgie, born and raised here. I am the CEO at Builders of Authority. So Builders of Authority is group, mastermind, and one-to-one coaching and consulting for business owners and entrepreneurs looking to become the authority in their industry with personal branding and organic social media content. And the way in which I got there is over the last 6 years, I've ran multiple agencies, from my own small agency to being a franchise of Height to being a partner at all of Height. Up until recently, I have focused on growing those agencies and selling multi-million dollars a year in agency work on the back of my personal brand. Me showing up, me doing things like hosting a podcast, being a guest on over 200 podcasts, speaking on over 50 stages the last couple of years, doing all of the things that have kind of comprised my blueprint or foundation to be able to grow and scale the agency. Now I'm teaching that to not just agency owners, but a lot of other entrepreneurs, coaches, and consultants, service-based business owners as well. And so in that process, I started to talk on stage. I think you were probably at one of the first events I ever spoke at, and people were just like hooked to how simple what I was teaching actually was. Nothing is outside of the box. It really takes discipline, consistency, and a strong why and purpose behind what you're doing and why you're doing it. And people just kind of got hooked. And for 2 years, people were like, Adam, do you have a course? Do you have a program? Do you coach people one-on-one? And for 18 months of those 2 years, I was like, no, I don't. And finally, this past November, I launched Builders of Authority and have been able to grow that community to over 50 people in our paid group. And I have some one-on-one clients as well.
All right, y'all. So you see it's a ton in there. So we got $1 million agencies, speaking, podcasts. Now we're doing branding. So we're going to try to break this down because I think all 4 of those things are things that are currently not only hot button topics or words, but like things that people are actually aiming for. So let's start with the obvious. Let's go back to the agency space because, again, I know I'm cheating y'all because I've heard the presentation. But even before the agency, you were in sales. And one of the common things we've seen is that a lot of people who were in sales before just so happen to magically do really good when building this agency. So tell us a little bit of that experience and how it helped you in your building of the agency.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I went full time in the agency world, I spent 5 years in medical device sales. So first year and a half of those 5 years, I worked for a very small company here in St. Louis, and my territory was on the East Coast. So I was traveling literally over like 75% of the year on plane, in hotel room, going and knocking a bunch of doors in order to grow and scale our business. And so at least my book of business, right? And I was very successful at doing that, but it was like we were the small guy in a large ocean of people, right? So I didn't necessarily have the brand recognition. I was a new rep, so I had to literally go like grunt my way to growing that territory, which I did do. And then for 3.5 years, I was at a company called ResMed. So if anybody's familiar with CPAP equipment, masks, things like that, ResMed is like the player in the market. And there's only one other competitor on devices and only two other competitors on masks. So people, regardless, knew who ResMed was. They didn't necessarily know me, but they didn't necessarily need to know me in order to continue to buy ResMed product. I had to get good at solution selling and relationship building and upselling and cross-selling and just more so account management. And so I grew that territory up to $25 million before I left back in 2020. And I got into digital marketing with Rank and Rent digital marketing back in 2018. So I built 200 websites myself from 2018 to 2020. Built those websites, launched Google business profiles, and then ranked them and started to sell some of those leads. And so I share all of that to let people know that I do have the sales background both from a high brand company as well as somebody at a company that nobody really knew who it was. Then I built 200 websites before I ever really started making money on them. And then I went full time in 2020 and started to develop the personal brand based off of what I knew from medical device sales, which was I didn't necessarily have to brand myself as the individual. People really knew ResMed, which kind of sold the product and stuff like that. But when I went full time, I realized early on I am competing with hundreds of thousands of options. So I need to stick out from the crowd. And the way I can stick out from the crowd is Adam McChesney, not necessarily what my agency is or isn't. And so I really just kind of dove into that. But what has made me like honestly a lot of money in the digital marketing space and why I've grown so quickly, because I still get tagged all over social media for digital marketing stuff, in addition to personal branding, because people still think I run the agency, is that I know so much of the technical side that I'm so lethal when I'm on a sales call or when I was on a sales call in the agency space, because I know SEO better than most people that are like SEO managers at agencies. And I've now built hundreds and hundreds of sites myself, done the SEO, seen the results, and then I've even turned some of those companies or some of those websites into actual companies. So I think that track record really put me in this like different sphere of the world to be able to obviously show up and do the work. But a lot of my success was due to all of that, not just personal branding, not just knowing SEO, not just having, a sales background, but all of those things mixed in together.
Which makes sense. So, and I think, and maybe you can speak into this because a lot of people are like, oh, when you're the owner, you should do this, you should know this. But I tell people all the time, it's a process. Like there's a journey. You can't just, I guess unless you have seed money, like from some big investor, but you can't just come in and I'm the manager and I just tell everybody what to do. You're going to be in the fulfillment. You're going to be in the sales. You're going to be in the marketing plans and all of those. You're going to be in the finances. So kind of speaking to what it was like as you continue to grow as a business owner to I'm the one building the websites. Now I've hired somebody or I was the one doing every single sales call. Like tell us about that transition because I think some people think it's just today I made that decision and I'm not in fulfillment. No, you're going to mess up something.
Yeah, that's a great question. So from really about, I'd say about June or not June of 22, about January of 2023, I was almost out of everything. So like the last thing that I ended up not solely focusing on, or the thing that I was solely focused on until the end was sales. And so in January of 2023, our sales girl Demi, who is phenomenal, she was pretty much wearing all of those sales buckets hats. So I was like just the top of the funnel, right? So I was just the top of the funnel, and then everything else kind of like started to do it. And I was truly just the CEO. And it was at that point where we were like crossing, like on pace to do about 2.25 million in 2023 before I ended up doing a merger with that agency. But what I look back on is I would try to get out, because obviously I joined masterminds and business groups and things like that. I was so focused on becoming the CEO and getting my hands off of everything that it actually became a deterrent to like me as the agency owner, because I tried to get out of all these different boxes too quick. And when that happened, right, like I had so much experience and expertise in these certain product areas or in account management or in sales that as soon as I went from like 0 to 100, it was like, okay, Adam's involved here, and then he's just going to rip the Band-Aid off and run away. Like I learned a hard lesson. It has to be a gradual exit from you in a specific area in your agency. And we obviously had like a little bit of a unique dynamic because we were a part of a franchise. So it's like some things didn't necessarily fall under what we were supposed to be doing, but I just would always, I knew where everything needed to be and where everything needed to go. So I could have done more in certain areas to make sure that we didn't run into some of those walls that we did. So it kind of just like turned my head a little bit. But once I look back and was like, okay, why did we fail here? Why did we struggle here? Or why did we have success here? It usually came from doing things like the right way and not me just being like, oh, hey, I'm the CEO. That's not my problem. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that answer because I mean, even myself in continuing this ever changing journey, right? You're like, okay, in theory, I get I'm not supposed to do this.
Mm-hmm.
However, in actuality, I should probably keep doing this until this person gets to a certain comfort level, so that I can take my hands off. Because like I know in our company, like I don't run payroll anymore. I used to for all the clients,
Yeah.
but all right, let me do a few. Did you watch me for 3 straight weeks? All right, now you're gonna do it, and I'm gonna watch you. Okay, I'm gonna watch you again. All right, this time I want you to do it, and I'm gonna double check it. Now I don't have to check it, and she's been doing a phenomenal job. Shout out to Mary. But to your point, like I couldn't just I don't want to do payroll no more. That's beneath me. I'm the owner.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're setting your business up to struggle in a place it doesn't have to, just because we're trying to get caught up in, oh, but Hormozy said I'm not. Like, okay, you and Hormozy are not the same person. So
Yeah.
I think that's phenomenal advice. I love it. I tried to get out of the weeds too quick. All right. So now let's talk about the popular thing. Now you get, like you said, you were on track to hit the 2.2, but you had already hit the million. Tell
Yeah.
us more about what was life like when you got to the goal, because a lot of people think if I can just get to $1 million agency, like life is perfect. But I've heard you even say in your speech, yeah, but no. So tell us, like, what was life like when you hit the milestone? What did you learn? Like, oh man, yeah, we're at 1 million, but I didn't recognize all of these things came into play. Like, tell us a little bit about that for the people who are either just getting there or on their way there.
Yeah, another great question. So I look back at it when I first went full time. It was July of 2020, and we basically started over at zero because again I was doing rank and rent, and then I went traditional agency stuff. And we for the first 9 months could only basically get to about $30,000 a month in recurring revenue because I was capped out. I was doing a lot of the work, all those different things, and then I became a franchise of Hype Digital from April of 2021 to October of 2021, we grew almost to we actually hit our first $100,000 month in October. So we went from 30 to 100 in a relatively short period of time. Like that's
Yeah.
6 months.
Right.
And so that was because I kind of just focused on what I needed to focus on at that time, which was sales. Right. And so I think I got mixed into the environment of like, oh, I need to be $1 million agency. But like, I didn't have a lot of the things set up in my agency to be $1 million agency. I was just told by people to go sell, right? And I was around some of the wrong people that were like, hey, go sell, sell, sell. And I was taking advice. One of the biggest pieces of advice I can give is I was taking advice throughout this entire journey from people who didn't actually do what they said they did with inside of their actual stuff as well, in multiple facets, inside, outside, like people that I just listened to on the internet, people that I was paying to be in their mastermind groups and everything in between. Right. So I was taking advice from all the people based on what they wanted or what they would like to have done differently, but they hadn't actually done it. And so that, hey, get to $1 million was kind of that first thing. I know agencies right now that are doing anywhere from like 500 to 750 that are a lot more profitable than I ever was at 1-2 million. I mean, you probably see this stuff as well, right?
Yes.
But again, they get around some of the wrong people, they get some of the wrong advice, and then they start chasing things that aren't real. So when I hit that first $1 million, or when I at least hit that first month of like, oh my gosh, we did 100K, because that's kind of what I was aiming for first. And once we did that, it kind of just continued to like transpire. So 2021, we did 750,000, and we were almost more profitable at 750,000 than we were at 1.7 the next year.
Wait, pause. Okay, this is good, because I tell people this all the time, and a lot of people are like, what do you mean? I don't understand. Break that down, because logically they would say, well, but if, all right, 750, but if you make it 1.5, you got way more money, which means by default you should be more profitable. Tell them why that's not true.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is that we were churning more clients. Like we were bringing on more sales, but we were also churning more clients. In addition to, I had to go hire more account managers.
Yeah.
I had to then bring on an integrator, like a COO within our agency, because I was able to do 750 and probably like right at $1 million on my own without having a ton of other like A players from a leadership or authority standpoint. But when we doubled our agency in 2022, we had too many clients. So we had way too many freaking clients where if there was always fires going on, right? In the client's mind, at least. So I needed to plug in a experienced COO type person to be the in between myself and the account managers and the clients. Because that's like the good and the bad with having a personal brand and growing the agency in the way that I did, is that everybody knows who I am. They have me on Facebook, they have me on Instagram, they have me on LinkedIn, they have my cell phone number, my email. So a lot of times people would just default to reaching back out to me. So we had a lot of growing pains, and that caused us to be, essentially make about the same amount of money in 2022, doing 2.5 times the amount of revenue essentially that we did in 2021.
That's a great answer. All right. Everybody knows I keep the notes. So why was 750 more profitable? Because we were churning more hires needed, and now you needed that new C-level person so that you could keep growing. Now tell us about this, because you said, yeah, we churned more even though we were selling more. That doesn't necessarily mean that your churn was higher than your sales. It just means, I don't want to spoil your shine, but tell them what that means in your language.
Yeah, so it just means we're working harder to keep the same dollar amount as well. So it's like, okay, and this is where I think so many people in the agency space, some people do this right, some people get this wrong. A lot of people that are teaching and coaching in the agency space are so focused on the percentage of churn. Well, that's fine if you're not selling a whole lot and you're keeping a bunch of your clients. But when we were selling as much as I was selling, we were just outselling a churn problem for almost 2.5 years. And so the number in and of itself was never There were certain months where it would get to like 15, 18%, but most everything else was under 10%. But that was just because we were really, really good at selling a lot of times as well, comparatively to being like, okay, is churn the situation? So that's why I encourage people to look at lifetime value, right? And lifetime, if you're an agency out there that's struggling to understand like what your niche is, because one of the things I would go back and do if I did it differently is I would niche down as I was really trying to grow and hit that $1 million, because things come easier when you do that. And that was advice that I was told not to do. But long story, I was told to do it, but I obviously didn't follow it. But one of the things in that aspect is when you're taking a look at lifetime value, if you're a generalist, so right now, you're able to see what services are most profitable for you, what services have the highest client retention and the longest lifetime value, and then what industries are those? Is it moving companies? Is it roofers? Is it remodelers? What is that lifetime value per industry that you're currently working with? Because again, the churn number can be completely skewed by so many different factors that are out there and doesn't truly tell the health of an agency.
We're going to mic drop right there. Okay. Now, let's do the opposite. We focused on you hit the big numbers. You crossed the 7-figure mark. You're able to say, hey, I did it. Now, with that being said, let's say to these people you're coaching now, which we're going to get to in a second, I'm sure they have some of these same goals you had. Like, yeah, I get all that, but Adam, like, bro, I got to get to that 7 figures. What are 3 things that you're going to tell them they need to do in order to get there, but sustain it?
I think the first thing is get super, super clear on your why behind why you want to get there. My why behind why I wanted to get there is because other people told me to do it. And secondarily, is I thought I was going to make a bunch more money in the process. So if your why is not strong enough that you're going to deal with all of the ups and downs in order to get there and then get to that next 7 figures, if that's what you want, then you might as well not do it at all. You might as well figure out where you can be sub 1 million, because again, as I mentioned before, you can get to $1 million on your own without having a massive team. But if you want to hit $1 million and then grow above and beyond that, your why has to be bigger than any specific issue, headache, red flag, burning fire that you're going to deal with, because otherwise you're going to quit in the process or you're going to get super upset. Number 2 is I would say you have to have all of your processes and systems completely focused and dialed in down to the most basic things. Otherwise, you are always going to be reinventing the wheel at some point. So like our sales process was not developed until we brought on a sales person when we were doing 1.7 million. That's a lot of gap, right? To not have a lot of processes and systems, but I was the visionary, I was the CEO, and I hate processes and systems. That's what I would tell myself. The story is I was just too lazy to do it. So have that. And then third is get super, super clear on who your ICP is, right? Because again, going up to $1 million, you can work with pretty much anybody and everybody, and you can be okay. But when you go past $1 million and you try to get to 2 million and beyond, it's really, really difficult if you don't know, hey, here's who our ICP is, here's how we serve them, here's how we onboard them, here's how we consult them, here's how we truly be a partner. You're going to continue running the rat race. And it's, again, all these problems and issues, I saw a lot of them sub 1 million and even right at $1 million. It's not like they went away when I went to 1.75. They were just doubled and tripled. And they were that much more, like there was that much more at stake because I couldn't solve everything on my own.
I just want to let that sit, because to even, as we were saying in the church world, bear witness to what he just said. Like even right now with our firm, we're kind of restructuring things for the exact same reason, because to your point, and we are niched down. But to your point, like, okay, I don't want that much variability. The way we do it is, I'm saying we need to do it this way because it's going to lead to a specific result. Or we need to have these touch points in place because 6 years of history shows if we don't do A and B, it doesn't matter that C is perfect. We didn't do A and B. So I think this is super crucial. And I love how you said the part about being a visionary and how we'll kind of like, yeah, but I hate systems and process. Like, going back to where you originally started, you got to be able to still do it though. Like, I literally just spent the past 2 or 3 weeks just doing SOPs. And
Yeah.
I'm like, this is crazy. Because there's so many things that you don't even know that you just intrinsically, I just always talk to him. I don't know. I just talk to him. Yeah, but if to your point, you're trying to work your way out, at least to some degree, like what things that would be natural for you may not be natural for your person who's a genius on the SEO side, but they don't know how to talk to people. Or
Mm,
like your sales guy is great at talking, but he doesn't know any other products or the stuff. Like, you have to have those different things there.
yeah.
So I hope y'all really got what he said. Let me recap it. 3 ways to hit 1 million. Clarity on your why. If it's not strong enough, you may as well figure out something else. Don't do it just because somebody said it or you're in their programs or whatever. You need to do it because that's something that you really want and tied to a why. Processes and systems focused and dialed in. Otherwise, you'll just keep making up new ways to do it and it won't be consistency. And being super clear on who you are targeting with marketing, sales, etc. All right. Now let's transition. So we've had the agency, we've done it at a high level. Now you're taking all of that knowledge, all of these lessons, and how I would do it different, and I have done it, to now these other companies, other agencies, by teaching them about the branding aspect so that they too can do what you were doing. So talk to us a little bit more about who are you looking for? What are the main core things you're teaching them and why?
Yeah, so I think the biggest aha moment for me was, again, when I gave that first talk almost 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago in March of 2022, is I got up on stage, I shared all the different strategies. I basically just shared, hey, here's what I'm doing in my life. And people were like, wow, this is simple and clearly it works. And it's a culmination of so many different things. And again, right after that, people were like, hey, do you have a course? Do you have a program? Do you have all these other things? And I was like, this is the first time I'm speaking on stage. I'm kind of a little bit overwhelmed that, like, I knew it would be good, but I just didn't know so many people were going to be like fascinated by me telling you to post twice a day on social media. Like, that's, for me, it was just like second nature to me because I've been doing it for almost 2 years, that it was, again, just crazy to me. So the next couple of years kind of to go, started to go. Again, I spoke at over 50 stages, like in person, not to mention the podcast and then the virtual events. And then finally in November of 2023. So at that point, I had went from franchise agency owner to VP of growth in an agency. And then also like, a partner shareholder, whatever you want to call it. And so I started to see like what my future could have. And I started to get more and more requests, not just from marketing agencies, but from your average coach, consultant. We have an accounting person in there, for example, that does like basic bookkeeping. We have a auto repair guy. We have all of these different industries represented in there, with all them having like one main purpose: is we want to grow our business, but we don't want to be known as our business. So we don't want to be Dave, the auto repair guy, because Dave, the auto repair guy, has been in the industry for 20 years, eventually wants to sell his business, and he wants to go help other auto repair shops grow and scale their businesses in the form of like coaching or consulting, but he also wants to do some real estate deals. Well, he's only ever really posted about his auto repair shop and only usually ever posts from his business page. And then you have the marketing agencies that come into our group that never have ever posted online and want to know why their agency isn't growing. They're really, really good at the SEO stuff. They're the best SOP agency I've ever seen, but nobody knows who they are outside of their existing clients and their friends and family. So I'm taking and I'm bringing in both group and one-to-one all of the good things I learned from personal branding, but tying back into, hey, if you want to also grow and scale your business effectively, here's the pain, the heartaches, and the struggles that I went through growing and scaling so quickly that I can now teach you the right way to do it. Because there's things that I did that were right, and there's things that weren't so right. Like one of the biggest issues was, and the hardest Band-Aid to like rip off was getting out of sales. And once I finally got out of sales, it wasn't that it was too late, but I had just accumulated hundreds and hundreds of clients that only really knew Adam McChesney as the company, not necessarily the agency, even though I wasn't talking to them, right? But there's SOPs, there's expectation setting with your clients. There's a whole slew of things that if you do that on the front end, even if you're signing up your first client, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to grow and scale past $1 million once you're there.
Okay, I like that, especially because we found that to be true. That expectation setting is so key on the front end. Because I know with us, when we sign a marketing agency, it's, hey, I'm here, but this is your go-to person. They're going to know your day-to-day stuff. This is who you ask. I'm there for, and we like to be super clear. Like, this person handles all payroll. This person is going to be doing your day-to-day and responsible for this. I'm here for the higher level strategy, brainstorming, making you a financial roadmap, all the consulting. So I think that is super key because to your point at the very beginning, because it was just me, it was like, all right, and then you gotta, hey, don't text me after this time. Hey, I don't work on, like, you gotta set those things up front so that as you continue to grow, like you said, it's you coming into our machine and our system, not just you coming to Cameron the person. So I think that's great. Okay.
I was just going to add one of the biggest, I think I'm a big, like I create scenarios in my mind sometimes. And sometimes I think like the world is falling. Right. And so that's a good and a bad thing. Cause sometimes I'll create it and be like, hey, I got to lock myself in my office and I got to go and get a bunch of new clients. And I got to grow and go and work on SOPs. Or today I'm making a bunch of YouTube videos, right? Like I'm very good at like departmentalizing and just going in. But there would be times where, like in the beginning, I never leveled up my mind sometimes when I would go from when I just started to being a 7-figure and multi-7-figure agency owner. And what I meant by that is like when I was first getting started, I had 10 clients and I would see me tagged in a Facebook comment, right, of somebody looking for digital marketing, or somebody would message me on Facebook. I would set the wrong expectation by how quickly I responded and then by the way in which the next calls would go. So it would literally be like somebody would send me a message right now, for example, while I was on a podcast with you, Cam, and I would start to look at it. And then I'm starting to think about that potential client while I'm on this podcast, and I need to be super like dialed in and focused with you. And I might even, like back in the day, I might even start messaging that person, be like, hey, I'm on a podcast, but I'll get right back to you after. And then I'll call them, even though I have a meeting right after that. Like, and so I start putting everything aside for this potential client. And so now the expectation is I can message Adam at any hour of the day and I should be getting a response back fairly quickly. And if I don't, something is wrong. And then we would hop on the onboarding call, right? Once we sold them, I would introduce them to their account manager, but I would be like, hey, Cam, if there's ever anything that goes wrong, you know where to find me. I wasn't even trying to say it, but it just kept coming out and coming out of my mouth because I was so worried about losing clients because we had so many. And I would get a lot of referrals, and I had over 100 5-star Google business reviews in our digital marketing agency that I took that so seriously that I was willing to allow that to take a toll on the rest of my life.
Which, to be fair, just in case you didn't know, like he said, he's married, he got a kid now. So why don't we talk about that? Because I think that's the other part that people don't realize. Like, okay, yeah, you're making your 7 figures. You got your stuff rolling pretty well. But like, how did you keep that balance? And maybe you did, maybe you didn't. That'll be for you to share. But like, I know even in the stage we're at, it's like, oh man, I got to make sure I turn off because I got 3 kids. I got to spend time with wifey. I can't work late every single night because, hey, you got to get that boo time in. We got to watch some shows. We got to eat dinner together as a family. So what was life like on the personal side in balancing, like, okay, we're doing great, we're making all this money, but how can I make sure that, babe is not over here mad because you making money, but you're not enjoying none of it with me?
Yeah. A lot of different ways to go with this question. And I think the best place to start is like, it's going to be a side answer into the bigger answer, but like, I have this recurring theme in my life, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs do, where I lack self-confidence in myself to be able to go solve certain problems that I convince myself that I can't solve. And so the biggest reason why I ended up moving away from my franchise agency and going into like a partnership was like, I didn't have the self-confidence that I could go tackle what I was needing to tackle last year while also becoming a father for the first time. And so in part, I was like, hey, I want to get some time back. And so the thought process around why I did what I did was right, because I wanted to spend more time at home. I wanted to not have the hundreds and hundreds of clients like be solely focused on me. And our agency was going through some other stuff where it was just going to be a really, really tough year. So I ran from the problem and thought by going in a different direction, it would solve all the other problems, which it did. Simple as that. But what I realized is that when Murphy was born back in September of last year, I took 2 weeks off of work. 2 weeks off of work. The goal was to take a little bit longer, but it ended up being 2 weeks. And in that moment, in those 2 weeks, I was like, this is some of the most peaceful, even though I wasn't sleeping a whole heck of a lot. This was some of the most peaceful time that I've had, because for the first time in years, literally since our honeymoon, did I actually take a vacation. Now, I had taken like sub vacations or like some of the trips that we go on where it's like, hey, you have a couple days to relax. But like, that was the first time for more than 4 days.
That's crazy.
That I did that. And I didn't even realize it, Cam. But I came back. And again, the whole reason was to have me in my lane in the business, and then work myself out of all of the other chaos that I was having my hands in.
Smart.
Like, come back after 2 weeks and like, there was no sales productivity. There was no things getting done without me physically there in certain areas. And I was like, oh crap, this department, my lane, is not product and systematized. There's a lot of things that like I thought or expected that aren't there. And so I started to realize like, hey, I got to start putting some of these things in place. But ultimately, I knew to myself that I needed to launch this Builders of Authority thing because of a lot of different factors. But it was Murphy getting born, experiencing those 2 weeks, wanting more of that, and realizing that what I had built for the last couple of years and what I was chasing was so far from who I actually am and what I actually wanted, that I had to make a decision to finally put myself and my family first for the first time.
That's good. That's good. And I think there's so much you said there, because I think to your point, it's like what you were aiming for wasn't even bad. It wasn't like, oh, it's the end of the world because I'm focusing on having a super successful agency. But I think you already mentioned it in your first step to hitting that $1 million. Like, what's my why though? And this was the situation that made that more clear for you, gave you more clarity to, okay, if I keep doing this for the next 10 years, the next 5 years, I'm going to miss out on a ton of stuff. I'm going to put my stress level at places it probably shouldn't be. So how can I scale it back, or how can I redo this or revamp this? And I think that's a very mature way to look at it, which is why you said, like, that was his number one thing, y'all. Make sure, like, you ain't just doing 1 million because when I do it, can we sustain ourselves on 500 and just be super profitable? That may be your thing. I even had a coach tell me that. He's like, look, you're going to hit this number. You could aim for this number, But if that's not what you want to do, don't even set your sight to it, because you're just going to make yourself worn out for no reason. So I think that's great. Now, let's keep going here, but bring it to the Builders of Authority group. So now you are in the ultimate mentor position. What are some of the common things that these businesses are doing that you want to warn whoever's listening to not do? So, hey, we got, I think you said around 50 people. The most common 2 or 3 things I'm seeing are habits that they're doing that they may not be cognizant of, or we're working on helping them to fix is.
Yeah. And so one of the other reasons why I started Builders of Authority as well is because I believe there's a huge opportunity to train people in businesses and entrepreneurs on free and easy things that they can do to grow their business without defaulting to just going and paying for digital marketing. So like I had seen time and time again where people were just getting screwed over by digital marketing agencies, which is like the typical thing every agency owner sees and hears every single day. Some right, some is on the business for just being a terrible client or not knowing what they were looking for. But the biggest thing that I see is that people go and they just default to going and dumping money into digital marketing at any stage of their business without taking advantage of all the free and easy things that they need to do. That's like 9 out of 10 people that come into the program. They just go pay a marketing agency or a freelancer, or they hire a virtual assistant, or they get someone on Fiverr to build the website, do the logo, like everything, SEO, everything. But then they're not willing to post and tell people on their personal Facebook page, hey, I own this business. They're not active in local community Facebook groups. They're not going and doing local networking events if they're a local business. So again, it's not that obviously digital marketing works, but it's not that it doesn't work or that I'm against that. What I'm against is them going and doing that, then blaming the digital marketing agency world for not being, ethical or whatever, but then they're not going to their personal Facebook page and promoting their stuff. So that's like the first big aspect. That's like a asset. That's like a recurring theme that I see literally over and over again. And then the second thing is that most everybody that is in this group and that I tend to align with, and I think I do a good job of this, and you've seen it all over social media, is that I give so much value for free in my content. I do multiple lives every single week. I do a podcast every single week. I post twice a day. I post once a day in our community free Facebook group. Is that when people get on the inside, they are usually a lot more educated, a more well-trained client that, yes, they get access to our course and past calls and all those other things, but they really come for the community and accountability. They don't come because they need and want to be so in bed with Adam, which that was kind of the way it started for the first 10 to 15 members because we didn't have something there. But I put an end to that super, super quickly and started making sure that I was focusing on bringing of more like-minded people into the community, because the community and the group itself is so much more than just me. And I didn't want to grow this business into what I had grown the agency into, because at $2 million, it was still so heavily reliant on me. And that was a big focus of how our clients and our atmosphere and our community has shifted, is that people come because of the group and the community, but they come because of the accountability as well. They can go learn all of this stuff from YouTube University. They can go learn all this stuff from my free content, but information is free and implementation is the fee, and accountability comes with implementation.
Okay, I like that. All right, so not being willing to do the things that are more available at their fingertips. I feel it. I feel it. Okay, let's go here. These are one of our more popular questions. What would you say has been your best investment to date that's produced the greatest ROI?
The investments I made in myself. So whether that's health and fitness, or in my own education, right? So joining masterminds, hiring coaches. I've had coaches, at least one coach at any given time now, for the last 3 years. And so at every aspect, and I joined a mastermind a month into going full-time in entrepreneurship back in August of 2020. And so being able and willing to put yourself in a position to go spend money to condense time is one of the biggest assets, one of the biggest superpowers that I've quote unquote had over the last couple of years. Because I knew, at least in my personal opinion, I felt like I was late to the game in certain instances of being 28, going on 29, going into entrepreneurship, and thinking that I needed to condense time because I've always been that person where I don't love paying for things, but I'm willing to go pay for those things if I know I can either condense time or get a return on investment. So that was like a big aspect for me, and something that over the last couple of years, I've just continued to do time and time again, understanding that it's usually infinite return on investment. It's investment in relationships, right? In knowledge, in things that I would have just never gotten if I didn't take action and spend the money.
Okay. If you could get in a time machine and you had 30 seconds and you know everything you know, like right now to the second, but you got to go back to high school you or college you, what would you go back and tell them?
I tell them two things. Always do your due diligence, bigger and better and more beyond than you think might be like the status quo of doing that. And second, quit taking advice from people that have either never done what they're giving you advice on, which kind of goes also into the due diligence part, because sometimes you think you're getting advice from someone that says that they've done something and then you actually realize that they haven't. And or three, don't take advice from someone who you wouldn't trade places with. So you see their life, you know the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. Don't be taking advice from someone that might have the money or the accolades or whatever, but then their family life or their health and fitness or all these other things is not what you would want in your own life.
That's strong right there. Okay. What has being a business owner taught you about Adam the person?
I'm capable of a lot more than I give myself credit for, which kind of goes into one of the lessons that I talked about earlier, which is a lack of self-confidence. I go on these up and down like roller coasters of like, Adam, you're awesome, to Adam, you suck. Like, so a lot of it is like, you know, this negative self-talk and things like that. But I think like if I had to look at the last like almost 4 years now of doing this full time, at least, I'm capable of a lot more than I would have ever thought. I hit $1 million quicker than I ever thought. I'm where I'm at quicker than I ever thought. Like right now, today, Builders of Authority is growing quicker than I would have ever thought. And so I sometimes downplay what is possible for myself based on that lack of self-confidence.
Have you seen some of your people you're coaching have that same struggle?
Yes, I would say like I do a really good job of masking it, right? So like people will tell me all the time, like when I share that with people, they're like, Adam, we would never know that you had a lack of self-confidence. Adam, we would never know that you struggle with those things. I do a really, really good job of trying to be present, focused in the moment, right? Of like, hey, I'm going to tackle this as if it's the only hour that I have today. Like this podcast specifically, right? A lot of other people, they're so like, you can just see it, tell it on their face, right? Again, not to say that you can't ever see it with me, but like, I think what I'm trying to coach people through is like, hey, this is normal and a part of life. And it hit me when like my mentors and people that I do look up to right now and I am learning from are like, Adam, this stuff is never going to go away. You have to get better at channeling some of this stuff yourself, get rid of some of the negative self-talk. And so I'm trying to pass the same lessons that I'm currently getting right now from my coaches and from my mentors back down to the people that I'm coaching and mentoring as well.
Smart and nice. All right. How has your definition of success changed from when you started 4 years ago to where you are now? Because I know in our case, it's way different. It used to be Cameron just pay the bills, make sure we got enough food to eat. Versus now, thank God that's not where we are, but it's evolved into more of a serving focus and opportunity focus. How about you? How has it changed since young Murphy's in the game now?
I think I feel success when at the end of a really, really long day, I've done what everything that was on my calendar. I did my morning routine. I did all of that stuff. We're still in business, but I was able to spend time with my family and then put my head on the pillow. And when you're like really, really tired, but it's a good tired, you're like, man, I crushed today. I did all of those things. For me, that's what success is, because for months, and I didn't even realize it recently, like I was struggling to go to sleep. Not that like anything was getting done wrong, but it was like, man, you are out of alignment with your core values and who you say you are. And it causes stress, anxiety, a lack of sleep. And so my definition of success and sole focus was like the accolades, was the stage that I was on, the money that I was making. And I realized that some of the people around me were feeding off of that because I was the catalyst behind a lot of those things, right? So other people were able to go shine and or say, we're doing this, we're doing that, we won this, we won that, based on paper and behind closed doors, a lot of the things that I did. But I wasn't appreciative or getting the same fulfillment out of doing those things. And so that's when I had to like realize and pull back, is like, okay, you have to go back on your own path. Of course, not the way we would have like scripted it or wanted it to, but like now I know, and I've now been, in the hundreds of people have reached out, shown support of me going all in on Builders of Authority, been like, man, this is you, this is you, this is who you, like, time and time again, realizing like, I thought I was crazy a little bit, as we all do, right? But then you start to realize, like, when you do the right thing, people start coming back into your life or in your life, and they're like validating or revalidating the decision that you made based on them having a similar experience or them knowing, what's going on, right? And so I think for me, it's like that whole sequence of knowing what you don't want based off of what you thought you wanted, and then realizing and coming back down to reality of like, nothing I talked about there was money related in terms of my successful day. And so it can be disheartening. It can take a little bit of a hit to your ego, as well, when it comes to, oh my gosh, I was so focused on this and it was money and success driven. And now it's just like, hey, I want to do good work, have a fulfilled day, do my morning routine, spend time with my family, and go to bed.
There was a lot in that. There's a lot. I hope y'all caught that. Because to your point, I think that takes a level of maturity to be able to like sit here and say like, hey, I was driven by the accolades and the success and the achievements because of that rush it gave me, versus now like that was cool, but I was stressed. Like I ain't feel right. Versus now it's like, okay, I may not have those same things. I've done them, but that's not what defines me. This is what better defines me. I'm in alignment with those different things. So I love that, because I think at some point, to your point, like being a business owner, we all think the same stuff, but it's a different level when you can get still like you had on those 2 weeks and say, okay, what's really the most important? Is this how I want to be defined or viewed, or is this just how I want to view myself? So I think that's awesome. I know you gotta go save the world, so we gotta wrap this up. So tell the people, if they're like, man, this dude is cool, bro. Like, how can we connect? Tell them again, you, name of the company, best websites or where they can go grab more materials, best socials, who you serve, so that way they know you talking about them and they can come check you out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best place to start is who I can serve. So I know a lot of agency owners listen to this podcast because Cam is amazing at what he does and absolutely crushes this. So if you're an agency owner and you are struggling to get a consistent lead flow into your business, at our peak, when I was doing all the personal branding stuff and super, super involved in the agency, we were getting 3 to 5 leads a day into my Facebook, right? So if you're not anywhere near there and you're struggling to find your next deal, if you're struggling to grow the agency the way you want to, it's worth us having a conversation. I can either point you over to our free community. We can talk a little bit about our paid group, and even go into some one-to-one options if that's where you're at. But our company is called Builders of Authority. You can go and join our free group by typing in Builders of Authority on Facebook in the search bar. Join the group. We do daily content and live weekly trainings. And then you can connect with me on social media on all these different platforms. Instagram is probably going to be the easiest, Adam L. McChesney, but you can also go to adammcchesney.com and see all the different social links that I have available.
All right. So if you're an agency, if your leads not popping like they should, you come get Mr. Crisco over here and he'll get you right. That's what he really saying. In case you didn't catch it. All right, let's summarize this episode because there was a ton of great stuff. I want y'all to definitely go share this. Go think through some of these things he said. Just starting from the top. Been on over 200 podcasts. Had the more than $1 million agency. Started in sales. One of the things he noticed, I don't know why I love this part, but tried to get out of the weeds too quick. Just because, again, the different noise from the different people, being addicted to those achievements and the success and those metrics, versus now maturing into a better, more well-rounded person that knows what he wants and is trying his best to stay in alignment, not just for his sake, but for his family, to keep that super tight, and just continue to grow that. I love what you said about why was 750,000 more profitable than 1.75 million. Digging into knowing what kind of life you want and the whys versus just chasing the names, the achievements, etc. Being careful on who you let speak into your life so that their goals and wants don't become yours. Lifetime value is always better than churn. That was a good one. The 3 ways to hit $1 million, clarity on your why, processes and systems, and super clear on who your niche and ICA is. Ton of stuff here. So guys, if you like this episode, make sure you tag somebody, send it to somebody. You know, why they cleaning up, why they doing the dishes, why they doing their miles at the track or at the gym or something. They can be listening to this because I think this was a great episode, and just realizing who you are and then making sure to reset or reestablish your path to stay in alignment with that. So, with all that being said, any last words, sir, before we let you go?
That was a great recap, man. You're an incredible host. I can't wait to listen to this back. I can't wait to hear some feedback on the episode. So thanks again, man, for having me, and appreciate you as always.
Well, hey, we appreciate you being here, and we always want to be a place where, like, you get to come, you tell your story and your journey, because that's what helps people. Me giving you a bunch of tax codes, like, nobody's here for that. But if we can show your story, somebody who's done it at I would say, a very, very high level, and to be able to take their bumps in the roads and their good things and their successes, and hey, take that and apply it to you. You may have to dumb it down, like he said. Don't try to hurry up and you at 500 grand a year. You don't need to be trying to hurry up and jump out the weeds. You need to let's make a plan for you. And these are some of the things that he can coach you on as well, right? Like, hey, I love that you're here, but let's come out with a plan to craft it so that you don't just crash the company, but you don't just stay there and now you can't spend time with your 3 kids, Cam. Like, that's the kind of thing that this podcast not only helps you with, but his course and the people he works with will help you with as well. So, with all that being said, we're going to let Adam go. But thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure you guys stay safe. We're going to be dedicated to continue to bringing you some of the best people out there. They may not, be Hormozy. Shout out to him. But We're going to bring y'all some great quality people that are doing what you're doing it, but doing it the right way and building a legacy for their family. So with all that being said, you guys take care of yourselves. See you on the next episode.